Should be good to go.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, yeah, Renee, Steve, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, you guys are doing Zoom stuff all the time, so you're veterans at this, and we'll hopefully be more fun than your normal Zoom meetings. But who knows? Maybe your normal Zoom
Yeah.
meetings are an absolute blast.
Uh,
No.
they vary. They vary. I think it's safe to say that there's pros and cons from working from home and being on Zoom. You get to reach out to the world and talk to nice people, but at the same time
Mhm.
too, the world can reach out to you at often inconvenient times and snow days and school days and things like that. So, it's
Yeah,
has its
well,
pros and cons.
you mentioned working from home. If you don't mind, let people know where you guys located and what do you do that you're working from home?
Go ahead.
We're in Massachusetts. We're about an hour from Boston. And I work I work from home some days of the week, but not every day of the week. I work at the University of Connecticut, which is about a 40-minute drive from our house, and I lead a program to help undergraduate students through all of their college years to prepare to go on to graduate school. So, getting them involved in internships and realizing ways to use their intersessions purposefully so that way they can be competitive applicants for especially for PhD programs in science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM disciplines.
Okay. All
Oh,
right.
so my 13th year.
I'd love to circle back to that a bit. And what about
Yes.
yourself, Steve?
I'm also a PhD in biochemistry. So I serve as a clinical consultant. So I work for a large tech company that has a consultancy division. So I kind of work at the interface between where drug developers create drugs and they need to get information directly from providers. So I spend most of my time doing market research with treating oncologists. We focus a lot on oncology and rare disease. So I interview folks all day about what they're using, what they'd like to use, and we're able to provide that feedback and talk about clinical data basically all day and every day. So we hope
Mhm.
to improve the lives of patients while not directly treating any folks. But it's a nice use of my science degree and really kind of helping move at least any industry forward in some meaningful way.
And Renee, you said you're helping out the STEM students, but you yourself have a PhD also. What is it
Yes.
in?
Cell biology.
Why wouldn't it be? Of course it is. So very highly educated.
Yes.
Well, you two, are you both born and raised in Massachusetts?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So, like I say, I've never lived outside a 20-mile radius, not really by design. It's just one of those like, you grow up here, you go to school, and then like the local
Mhm.
city, when I'm first to college, and they're like, hey, you have a project you can do for your senior thesis over at the med school, and I'm like, great, and they're like, hey, why don't you come here for a PhD? And I was like, all right, it's like one thing kind of leads to the next, and opportunity keeps knocking, and next thing you know,
Yeah.
your parents tell you to do well and stay in school, and I just never left.
Mhm.
Where are the accents?
So about two beers deep is usually what happens. Like there's a solid Boston accent, and the farther you go out, the more it becomes just whatever. I kind of mumble, but
I
uh,
feel like also when we're talking to our parents, I feel like
yes.
we end up having more Boston accents than every day. We're used to enunciating so much, and I think that makes
Are
the
you guys
accent.
like an hour going west out of
Yeah, we
Boston?
live like where the Pike in like 84 goes to Connecticut. So
Mhm.
Okay. I was born and raised in Massachusetts.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you know where we're at. We're like
Yeah.
20 west of
Yeah.
Worcester, but
And my family's still there, and my
Mhm.
nephews are going to school, there as well.
Mhm.
And and
I've
I
always been in New England, and
okay.
I knew in high school, I didn't know that this was an advantage that I guess I had in high school, that I had marine biology and microbiology in high school, in addition to like general biology class. So when I went to college, I knew I wanted to study microbiology and I knew I wanted to be a rower, even though I had never rowed before. um, and the University of New Hampshire had both. So when I was applying, those were kind of the two top things that I was looking for. And then for grad school, I went to UConn, and now I work there
That's
with
very, very cool. And you guys gave me some information about yourselves leading up to this, and it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but growing up, you two were on, it seemed to me like different paths. Steve, it seemed like you said you tried to dabble in some athletic stuff, but it never really took or went that well for you, where conversely, Renee, it seemed like you were like involved in like athletic stuff left and right, trying everything under the sun. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, I know. I was definitely the band kid with the purple face at the back of the pack doing the mile run and like trying not to die. Uh, and
What was your instrument?
trombone, I play some piano now and some guitar as well. I
Yeah.
picked up in grad.
Okay.
It's super helpful because like our oldest son's like super into music, so and it's a great
That's
way to connect
cool.
with the kid.
Yes.
The younger one, he's also a video game band guy, so it's like
Mhm.
I try to relate and we try to normalize the fact that like we're exercising because like again there wasn't a lot of sports for me growing up, and like my youngest son is like, I'm 11, I don't have to do it. I'm like, yeah. If I could talk to my 11-year-old son, I'd be like, you might want to do a little something, but we're not going to make it,
Well,
right?
I think it was last week. He said, I need to strengthen my leg muscles. So, you know what he chose? Running on the treadmill.
Well,
He went on the treadmill, and then all of a sudden I could hear really loud pitter patter. And we always hear him up and down the stairs. So I knew
Yeah.
it. I said, I really hope he's not on the treadmill because that sounds really fast.
yeah,
Doing
sprinting.
sprints. He was doing shuttle sprints
Yeah,
downstairs in the basement.
we have our basement set up so
Doing
like
something.
yeah, we exercise down there and we
Yeah.
have it so like if he plays video games down there, like we'll be
Yes.
down there doing stuff next to him. So he's
Mhm.
not like isolated off by himself and like we'll be
Yes.
hitting the bike or doing extra yoga or
Yeah.
whatever. So, he sees us doing it all the time and he knows he has
Mhm.
access to things and
Yes.
we provide that as an opportunity for him.
But in Linchpin, we joke so much about running, and he chose running as
All things.
yeah.
I was gonna say if Steve started off not immersed in athletics, which by the way, I can relate to that very much. I was not a sporty kid in any way, shape, or form growing up. You know, Renee, you said you dabbled in a whole bunch of stuff, but at the same
Mhm.
time, you said you were in a brace for a whole bunch of years for
Yes.
scoliosis. Talk to me about that because that seems, I mean, being a kid's challenging enough. Being a
Oh,
kid
yeah.
strapped into a big brace doesn't sound like a
Yeah.
good time.
No. So my spine went like this, and then I had a bump to the side, but then also a bump that made me curve forward too. So my behind
Oh,
is sticking
wow.
out. So the scoliosis and the lordosis. So I would regularly, as 5 to 12-year-olds do, we grow. And then I stopped at 5'5", but I grew until then. I had to keep getting new plastic back braces molded to me and have new ones be made. And I had to wear, it was very like thin gauze material that I had to put on first, and then the back brace, which would Velcro across my chest 3 times. So all
Oh
the way
my
down to my
goodness.
hips. It went from below my armpit, like right at my armpits to below my hips. So I always had to kind of squat down this way or kind of tip forward almost as if it was like a single leg deadlift, to be able to reach something on the floor that my peers at that age would often put there, to tease me.
Did
And
you have to sleep in that thing? Like, is it a 24
yes,
hours a day kind of thing?
I had to sleep with it, and I remember opting to not sleep with a pillow because that way I was more flat. And
Holy,
in the
I bet that's
summertime,
wonderful on a muggy day.
yeah, well, in the summertime, I remember in elementary school, I was allowed to take it off after lunch. So I would keep it in my cubby, and we were only a few streets away. So I would walk home with the, backpack on my back and this thing like in my arms this way walking home from school because I would be melting. But I would also wear it over my clothes in the summertime too, so that way I could do that. But it was very uncomfortable. But in terms of finding clothing that I would want to wear.
Sure, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I remember when we would go to dance, I was allowed to take it off for dance. So my sister and I would go to dance with our neighbors. We would all carpool to go together. So I think that's one of the reasons why we stuck with dance for that long. But then eventually I needed an option where um, I could have a low impact sport and the back brace no longer fit. And
Mm.
so at around age 12. So it was about 7 years of wearing, I think from ages 5 to 6, I think there was a period of time where it was like a softer brace. But then after that, it was 24, almost 24/7 of
Wow. And
wearing it. So, but that's how I got into swimming.
I was
Um,
going to say, did
from
you
there.
have just a desire? Like, were you a sporty kid that happened to be forced to wear a brace, or was being forced to wear the brace made you want to try a bunch of stuff because maybe, it just looked appealing or less restrictive or whatever? Which one was it?
I think uh we were always sporty minded.
Okay.
I was not musically inclined. I tried the clarinet. My sister
It
tried
didn't take.
yeah, no. But growing up, my parents were very much into sports. My grandpa worked with the New England Patriots for about over 30 years.
Oh,
So we were
wow.
very exposed to sporting events and conversation. And growing up on a cul-de-sac, we had access to be playing with all the neighbors that were fortunately our age. So that helped as well. So we were always very active in trying different things and uh, just wanting to try to stay active. And I was so used to going to physical therapy. I half joke that if I ever went back to school, I would invest in going for a physical therapy degree. But now raising two boys and working full time, and it is quite the financial investment as well. I feel like that would be maybe in another lifetime or something, but just I was always so accustomed to seeing the benefits of movement and exercise
Mm.
that it kept me engaged in wanting to try different sports and encouraging others to want to do the same, which is why I liked being a part of the swim team and part of track and field. So, we were all going after our own individual goals, but working together
Yeah, for
at
sure.
the
And you
meets.
And you mentioned the hecticness of just life of, working full time and raising kids. And anyone who's living that life knows that that doesn't just bestow upon you tons of free time and an open schedule and just
Mhm.
unlimited freedom. And, but one thing that it does do is, when you've got kids and other people that depend upon you, is it can often help you refocus your priorities as to why you're
Mhm.
doing certain things with your life or what's important or whatnot. And Steve, maybe you can chat for a second. I thought it was pretty powerful what you wrote me in your little summary of, your not renewed, but maybe sharpened focus on being around for your kids with you said your dad had some very significant health struggles, to say the least,
Yeah,
that you witnessed. Could you kind of walk us down that a little bit?
yeah, he passed away a few years ago, but it's one of those things where I think uh, life gives you a lot of opportunities to sort of use excuses, and sort of not do things, particularly when you're not, sporty to start, right? Like the bed doesn't get less comfortable at 5 a.m. Burritos are still delicious.
Right.
And then, when you have kids, and particularly since, like my oldest one's got special needs, he was not a great sleeper. My younger one wasn't a great sleeper either. Like
Oh,
it
wow.
compounds. And I see all my friends who now have younger kids. We chatted with one of some of our friends yesterday who have, 2 and 4 year olds, and
Mhm.
you see the kids running around and crazy in FaceTime, and I'm like, I was there for sure. And everyone I see in the community too, right? It's the single moms doing the workouts with their kids is like the dumbbell, and I'm like, I remember doing that. And you see it like, as everything keeps going forward and forward more and more, like, there was a time where life circumstances had me, at home again, divorced with 2 kids, and seeing my father who had 4 heart attacks, a heart transplant, and was a lifelong smoker. But like it
Mhm.
was one of those things where like he was very physically active. He worked a lot, and
Hmm.
that 80s generation of parents was like, you didn't go make artificial, muscles in a gym or by machines. Like, you worked for a living, and that's where you got strong. And, your reward culturally and societally is food. And, like people eat and they go down this path, but they avoid other things, which they feel like they're super healthy because like you're not doing, recreational substances or things of that nature,
Right.
right? So like, what's the harm with having an extra cookie or a piece of cake, right? And so I
Mhm.
saw for myself, like, hey, genetically, like things are not going great in terms of that family history. Most of my cousins who are, males that are over 40 or 50, like have had some sort of heart stent or other sort of atherosclerotic
Oh,
cardiovascular.
wow.
So it's
Mhm.
like it stares you in the face. And for me, it was like, all right, with the lack of sleep and everything else, and I was like, it's time to get back to where I was. Like, I dabbled in crew in college. I was stubborn enough to stay on the team. I saw the benefits of getting more fit. I mean, I was never going to be super competitive or, win medals, but, you see the difference there and like, how much you can slip off and, it keeps you motivated to do a workout here or there. And, you try to figure out where it is you can, but it's a hard process to go back from the, being a little too comfortable to, hey, we're going to do 2, 3 workouts a day. And you got a home
Hmm.
gym that's a couple kettlebells and a pull-up bar. Like, you got family members who are like, hey, what's with all the workout stuff? You're like, well, it should be obvious for me, right? But I think it's just I think societally and generationally kind of put in that like you can avoid some other things and you're good enough. But I think we're mindful of the fact, and I think one of the biggest benefits of us being married and sort of like a linchpin couple is that like it helps tip the scales in the favor of like, at 5 a.m. we're both in agreement on our sleep schedule. So like we're getting up, and if the other one doesn't get up, it's like, hey, like it's time to go move, right? We're downstairs, like I don't have to argue with my spouse about like we're gonna buy a barbell. Like, she's the one
Which one?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
right? It's like
exactly.
we're in the space where we're gonna have this to work out. Like, yeah, we have 2 spaces to do it, and like that
Mhm.
coordinates great. When we go to the supermarket, we're loading up on produce as opposed to snack cakes, which
Mhm.
I know works for some people, but I'm like, it's probably not best for me, right? I know what happens if I get a little slippery, more slippery with the nutrition. And so I think that's the thing for me is like, where do you stay mindful, recognize where you are in the scale, right? I mean, I think one of those things I noticed having the children that we have of the age is like you recognize growing up, like, some people are taller, some people are faster, some people are this. You realize the great diversity of people, but when it comes to health and nutrition, you want like a single quick one-stop solution for everybody, right? And it doesn't work. So you have to realize and go to your doctor like I did and figure out like, all right, where are my risk factors? Where am I? Like, what do I need to do? And like
Mhm.
keep my weight in check and blood pressure in check. So that way I can maximize my, potential to stay healthy. Because like
Mhm.
I have 2 children who are going to need me for obviously a prolonged period of time. So let's make this as, as beneficial for them as possible and keep myself as functional as possible. I mean, I was carrying
Yeah.
kids around to the zoos and all that. Like you want to be able to do that level of
Yeah,
functional.
oh yeah. Yeah, I've got a question for both of you, and I don't know if it's exactly your scientific expertise, but you know, I've got a 2.5 in sociology from Worcester State College, so you're definitely more qualified than I am to answer any of these questions. Where do you two fall on, I guess what I'm trying to get at is you tell me like with what happened about your father, and you tell me about other males in your family tree or whatnot, and what has befallen them at certain ages or whatnot. And you're obviously looking to avoid that path, you know, when everyone in the family seems to be succumbing to the same illness, disease, whatever it happens to be, but they're all generally living the same lifestyle. It's just easy to say it's the genes, it's the genes, it runs in your family. But if you're moving differently, eating differently, living differently, or whatnot, um, what's your personal opinion as to do you still have to be locked into that genetic path, or it does it still reside in your body, but you have more control over it than people realize? Where you land on that.
Yeah, this is one of the things I do deal with for work too, right? Because I think our public perception of like our scientific literature is very, very, there's a huge span when it comes to biology. Is I think probably the succinct way to say it, right? Like we used to study chemistry and physics and made so much great advances because there was such a need to do so. But like our understanding of biology, is really quite delayed. And obviously there's ethical concerns and there's so much biodiversity, as I mentioned
Mhm.
before. So the whole what I was going to say all that is like it's very complicated, and
Sure.
even when it comes down to an end of one of myself, I realize like you think about all the things you can do, like you're just kind of kicking the diseases down the pathway, right? And then we have a lot of things we can sort of measure for the what, but we never really understand the so what implications of that. And I mean, like you can measure things like how much you're sleeping, you can measure exactly like the calories you're putting in or your cardiovascular input. But the impact of the so what of how much those actually are going to be meaningful and sort of delay the onset of X, Y, or Z disease, like we don't have a great sense of that, right? Everything's retrospective. It's based on population studies. So we can say, hey, unquestionably, if your BMI is over 40 and you're very large and overweight, there is an associated risk with the development of hypertension, chronic kidney disease. These will things that diabetes. These will lead to atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. These are knowns to some quantity, but that's over a population. So for you or me, it's really hard to know. All you can do is like measure things you can measure and go to those specialists and say, hey, what's my current risk? And, they can give you the best sense, but these things are always unavoidable, right? We all unfortunately have the same outcome. We don't want this forever.
Something's going to get us eventually.
Yeah, but like, it's keeping it stacked in your favor, and it's more of a quality of life, I think, argument for me at this point than it is like I know I'm going to guarantee myself anything, because I think, we all have the anecdotal stories of like the, 90-year-old grandma who smokes 3 packs a day.
Right.
And you're like,
Sure.
You've been dodging bullets forever, but you also know the guy that's been running marathons who had the heart attack, right? And so
Correct.
those are N of 1 representations where like you don't know where you fall on that, overall population distribution. So, I always say like, you're the best advocate of your own, well-being, but you're also your own worst doctor, because like, you feel good, but that doesn't mean like your risk factors are great or your blood work's great. So
Sure.
go see the doc, like they're
Yeah.
going to like put in the best context for you, because they're going to be up to date on, your heart, or, endocrinologist for diabetes and whatever it is you're worried about. So, it's definitely going to help me out, but it's inevitable, right? So
I
it's,
think I think it's an honest answer, right? It's complex. Anyone who says that this will definitely lead to this outcome is probably lying. But I guess at the end of the day, maybe you are or aren't sure how much your environmental factors or your genetic history or whatever it is going to lead to a certain outcome. So absence of that information, it's probably a generally good idea to
yeah.
eat well and move.
Yeah.
And
Like
but we're not perfect, right? Like,
right.
if it's a birthday for somebody and we're gonna go out to like a Mexican restaurant, like I'm having the beer and the burrito. I'm gonna be the first one to admit it, but like lunch on a normal day, I'm having like yogurt and berries, right? So like I
Yeah.
try to do that more often than not. Like we're trying to move, we're trying to make decent decisions and like normalize dietary,
Yeah.
quality of living for like our kids. But we understand, like, I wasn't doing this from day one. And again, you're just trying to keep the pros column, more stacked up than the cons.
100%. 100%. Renee, I got a question for you, or maybe, for both of you as well, because you guys mentioned it a second ago about, hey, you're on the same page of like, we need a new barbell. And you're like, of course we do. And I know where it's going to go. I actually have it picked out, or, shopping at the grocery store, any of that kind of stuff. Different nutritional decisions. Again, not perfect, living life, but generally speaking, trying to, be aware of protein and food quality and macronutrients and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Are you two like the weird anomaly in your friends, or are you linked up with a local group of people that are like-minded?
I am definitely the weird anomaly.
Yeah, I think we both kind of. I mean, she has
Yeah.
like a gym that she used to be part of that she's still kind
Yeah.
of associated with, that helps.
Yeah.
I think the worst part for me is like, even though like like she recently rode the standard, right? And it's like I brag about that to people like I used to row crew with, and like
Yes.
I think the message they hear is like, hey, we're working out and you're not, so they can't even appreciate like the magnitude of like this success, right?
Yes.
Or if I like row a marathon, they're like, oh, I haven't touched my erg in forever. So like
Right.
you can't even like get the conversation where like if you go in like the private group, you have people who are already like in alignment that you're
Yeah.
like, hey, we could celebrate this, and
I
that may
get
be
it.
your first pull up, or it may be like your PR for whatever. And like
Yeah.
at least then you have an outlet where people aren't looking at you sideways.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, much like I said before, like you get a lot of commentary around holidays of like, what's with all the workout stuff, or like, why are you rowing so much? Like you have a day off and you're gonna spend the entirety of it on a rowing machine. Like,
Yeah.
why? It's like,
I
well,
mean, to answer your question, I mean, even being a power lifter I trained and competed for almost 5 years, and wanting to stay in the same weight category. I never was. Some people cut to be able to go to a lower weight category and still be able to keep their same amount of weight, and then they're higher up on the leaderboard there in their weight category. I always just wanted to not be starving and lifting my best and like feeling good and not feeling woozy going up on the platform. But I always had to stay within a certain amount of the weight categories were in kilograms, so within kilograms there. So
Right.
I was always very precise throughout all of my training with tracking my macros. And I have found that helps me to feel my best even when I'm not, under pressure situations of training for a powerlifting meet. Even nowadays, I feel my best keeping track of my macros. But even this past year, I've learned that just kind of through doing a low FODMAP meal plan, and then that I've become no dairy and no gluten. And I'm Italian, 3/4 Italian, and our family members are allergic to garlic. So so I am definitely an anomaly of,
Uh-huh.
okay, there's times when, I even have to call a restaurant to say, all right, I've taken a look at your menu and I don't want to cause a big stink, when we're going out as a group or something. So what should I order? So that way they even have it prepped, because sometimes they've already marinated the
Hmm.
protein ahead of time. So,
Yeah, no, fair enough.
but then even fueling for a marathon row and even for the standard, um, that
Tell
was
people,
that
tell
that
people if
was
they don't
different
know,
as well.
if they don't know, what is the standard?
So it's a maximum amount of meters that you can row in 24 hours. So it's not rowing for 24 hours, because I think my hips would definitely fall off.
Hmm.
But it's however much you think you can handle within that period of time. And the proceeds go to the Big Fish Foundation. And it's one of the challenges that Rogue Fitness puts on. But yeah, it's always been kind of enticing to me, because I said, well, I like rowing, and a lot of the Rogue challenges, or any challenge, it's like you have to do this specific thing.
Right.
And how that came about, if you haven't watched the YouTube documentary of the standard, it's excellent. It's only 45 minutes long. But the way they trained was, what was it? A 10K within an hour. And then however much time you have left in that hour, you take a little break, and then you do that again for 24 hours. And I was like, you didn't have to do that.
My goodness.
Yeah. So where you didn't have to do that specifically, you could just, row for as long as you want, take a break, get back on. There was flex to it. And that helped a ton with the mindset of, okay, I can do this. And I certainly was not rowing at a pace that
Sure. I mean, you're gonna go for, right, right.
go for broke. I was going for a stroll down the river on the rowing machine, right? So I had been training to do my first marathon, and I did that in early November. And I said, well, this is coming up in the next month from then. So my body was familiar with the pace and what I could handle for hours at a time, different hour chunks at a time. So that's what I did. So
And then you said you rode a bit over
yeah,
114,000 meters.
yeah. 114 and 132.
Wow. So, Steve, your wife comes up to you and says, "Hey, I got this great idea. I'm going to do the standard." You say, "What's that?" She tells you it's 24 hours of rowing. And then you say,
I said, "Do you want a protein shake at 3?" Or like, what do you? So I did the marathon with her because we have one rower and a bike. So like I sat on the bike for 4 hours and did 100K on the bike when she did that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I also have a problem of like overcommitting myself and doing too much. Like for me, like the beauty of Linchpin is that like I can scale and modulate because I always
Yeah.
try to overcompensate.
And
So when
the
I
shirt I'm wearing
yeah, so
today.
when I
yeah.
first heard like she was gonna do that, I'm like, I can't do that because if I get in a competitive mindset to do that with you and I commit to it, like I'm gonna break myself.
Yeah.
So I
Oh,
like I'll bring you snacks. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm impressed. If my wife told me she wanted to do that, I would have said, "I'm here to support you. Good luck."
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But he already said, okay, we're going to need a second rower for next year, because now the bug is in the head to want to do it.
She's
But
gonna talk me into it. I know.
Yeah,
I think,
right.
I think it already happened.
Yeah.
So
Something I got such a kick out of because I hear it all the time, and I love the honesty of it. We don't shy away from stuff like this. You said, Steve, when you were starting to poke around for programs and figure out what to do, that you went into Reddit and started trying to find what you could find, saw this, crazy guy wearing a helmet squatting, which God bless him. I think Tanner has probably brought more people to Linchpin through squatting in a helmet on Reddit than like any source in the whole world. It's hysterical how many people relate their story to Tanner on Reddit.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's not like advertising for it, right? And so I
No,
think
no,
those things
no.
where, again, you're looking for that, like, again, as I said before, like, there's people are so diverse, but like, we get in this marketing mindset where we want like this quick, easy solution. So, like, you find some Excel lifting program on the internet, and you're like,
Oh,
this will work for
sure.
me. And of course, it doesn't. And then you're like,
Mhm.
make excuses because, like, oh, I didn't sleep well enough, or I didn't give myself enough deload weeks, or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And then you see this guy who's lifting basically like a semi truck, and in a costume, and you're like, well, this is the coolest thing I've seen all day. And he
Right.
makes these statements of like, I'm not even on a strength and conditioning program. I'm like, well, clearly you must be on something. And then
You're
you're
on
like,
something.
all these other folks are
Yeah.
testing to how the program is like super flexible and it's more of a framework than like a just do this. And for
Mhm.
me, that was kind of a light bulb moment, right? I was like, oh, if I can do something that's going to be more of a adjustable framework as opposed to like, all right, these percentages, I don't have to go to the gym and lift exactly 80% of what I did for
Mm-hmm.
X number of reps
Yeah.
because like you don't always sleep well or eat well or do
Yeah.
something, right?
100%.
Well, and
What I
when
liked that you said that I thought was so real because I hear it all the time from people is you saw it, okay, this guy's interesting, he's really strong, you check it out, Intro is doing this thing, CrossFit linchpin, you're like, the word CrossFit is in there. And then in your mind,
That
that
is
word, you were like,
dirty.
now I'm actually not sure if this is for me, which I hear that constantly. And I love the fact that it's like, that's a real statement and things that people deal with. And I'm sure they're not the only one. So, you know, what, so others can resonate with this, but what was it that, you know, turned you off a bit to it? And what made you actually like continue to poke around even initially when you're like, darn it, it's CrossFit. This might not actually be for me. Like what gave you that sense?
Yeah, the turnoff was easy because I used to do like judo for a little bit and dabbled in that, and it was directly in the same building as a CrossFit box. So like I would interact with people who would kind of go over there, and it was like basically a straight shot of we're going to compete with barbells until somebody gets broken, right? And that
Mm,
was sort of my outside perception of it, of like because people would do it for 6 months to a year, and then they're like, oh, I threw out my back or I threw out this, and for me, I was like, I want no part of that, right?
Mhm.
sadly, that's a common, so like it breaks my heart to say that, but I talk to a lot of people, and not just like okay, Lynchman's one thing, but like if I'm out at our Christmas party with my wife's friend, what do you do? The word CrossFit comes up. This is not a scientific study. This is just my gut feeling, but I think I hear frequently someone go, "Oh, CrossFit," and there's some sort of a related story. It's I did that for a bit, but now I don't. My
Yeah.
brother-in-law did that, blah blah blah, his shoulder. Oh, I used to know a person. I almost never hear, "Oh, I know what you're talking about. I've been doing it for 10 years." Like
Yeah.
I never hear that. And I'm always like, why don't I hear that? So the
Mhm.
fact that the fact that you had that reaction to it doesn't shock me at all. So that's my backstory is why I like that part. So anyway, continue. Your next you're in a judo gym, you'd see these people compete with
Yeah.
barbells, so somebody
So
blacked
you
out.
have that again, that word's almost like dirty when you see it, but then like, like on Reddit, I think the community is very present and they, you see like a Tanner and again, God bless them. I hope he never changes. But then you have all the people who are like actual members who are like, listen, I'm just a normal human being who, had a similar background to me. And it's like, this program's great because I can do a reasonable amount of work and I'm not lifting and, doing cardio the
Mhm.
same day and, hurting myself. And it's wonderful. Like, sure, these folks exist that can, do these enormous lifts, but
Right.
for great for a normal person. But I was like, oh, I never heard of this before, that there was a division of CrossFit that like wasn't, you know, aimed directly to have you be like a professional athlete on TV.
Mm,
It's like that ain't happening for me, right? I don't mind pushing myself and trying to accomplish my own goals, but like this is reality, right?
right.
So I need something that's going to keep me healthy as opposed to like trying to make myself a professional athlete. So
Mhm.
once I realized that there's a program and it was flexible and like I know they had a free trial and I tried the free trial because she's like still powerlifting and I'm like,
Mhm.
huh, you know, and it's on Facebook, which again, I had no interest in whatsoever, right? When I saw that, I was like,
Understood.
like that to me was like just beyond
Understood.
nerdy, right? I'm like, this has got everything wrong, but I'm like, I saw this
Yeah.
thing on Reddit that people were like, let's try it. I'm like, I've tried 6 other like lifting programs that just don't work, and I'm too tired. I've been rowing too much and lifting too much. Let's give this a shot. And then like, the first couple videos where you like have a very realistic approach, and you're like, listen, you're gonna do this, you do what's appropriate for the day, and like, if you're new to Linchpin, check out this video about like how to approach a heavy day, and like, and sometimes the workout's 20 minutes or 15 minutes, and I'm like, all right, this
That's
sounds a lot different than what I did before. And
Yes.
there's no deload weeks. And I was like, well, when do you rest? I'm like, well, and the scaling conversation comes in, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I was a very slow student, even though I heard all the things I'm supposed to. Like for them to get in, I was like, there's still a leaderboard, right? And I'm like, now I see it as like this is a benchmark of like where you can fall in the realm of the world.
Very
And I
cool.
haven't even like logged my scores for the past 6 months, because like that like takes the pressure off of me, and it works
Good
for
for
me.
you.
If I don't have to look at a score, it says, hey, Steve, you did this workout in 15 minutes and 6 seconds, and it's 15 minutes and 8 today. Like to me, I'm my own worst enemy there, right? If there's no time and I finished it and I knew I put forth a good effort, I'm like, cool, we win today.
Yeah.
So like that's what I need to do to adjust. And it took me a long time to get there. But now that I've fully like got on with the program, the framework, like yeah, things don't hurt as much.
Well, I mean, you nailed it too. Like there are, well, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here for no reason, but it's kind of like we talked about earlier, like stacking the deck to the best of your ability in your favor. There are some general principles. You shouldn't, drink till you black out every day. You shouldn't just live on, M&Ms. Like there's just some, there's some general things like eat well, live. With regards to like strength conditioning, there are some, we got to make sure we're hitting the right gross movement patterns. We got to make sure that we're modulating intensity and volume. Like there are these things that apply to every human being, but then what does each human being need to do to stay consistent? Somebody posting every day and seeing the leaderboard, regardless of where they fall, might be critical to them staying engaged. Somebody not posting each day is actually critical to them staying engaged. Neither one of those is right or wrong, because you're both doing those major building blocks and you're doing them in a way that actually works for your life and keeps you consistent. So, like if you hit the workouts hard every day and you post your scores, well, when the work comes up again, you'll have a metric as to how it went. If you hit the workouts hard every day and you don't post your scores, you're still going to get fitter, faster, and stronger, just without the ability to look in the rearview mirror. It is what it is. Like it's totally good to go. Like, and yeah, it is infinitely scalable to the individual. And it makes me very happy when I hear people that have found a way. Because like, who cares if the program's great you do for 6 months and you never do it again? Like, I want to hear that people are doing this for a long time, so they are around for their kids and their grandkids and things like that. And so that's where that personal freedom has to come in. And it warms my heart to hear that you did it. And then somehow we even got somebody who loves to bench press and in the program as well. Like, how in the world, Renee, did you get involved with a program that doesn't shy away from running? Even though I know you did a lot of 5Ks in the previous life.
Right, yeah. 5K Renee was my nickname for all through grad school. Yeah, no, and I mean bench press is it's a full body exercise, which when you
It's a
first look
gift from
at it,
heaven.
yes, like you don't you don't know that at first. But there's always little pieces of your technique, hand placement, everything that can be worked on each time that you bench press. And it seemed like a lot of CrossFit workouts, they don't have bench press as part of a typical month cycle-ish.
Mm,
So I always get excited when I see bench when I see the bench press, because I've always been a part of sports that are very leg dominant, whether it's
mm,
freestyle swimming or rowing, track and field, being a distance runner. That I do lack upper body strength. So knowing that I can incorporate leg strength with upper body strength to help improve my bench press, uh, it's fun to do that. So
well, it makes
um,
me very happy
yeah,
when people are getting out of it what they should, that it's made their life better in some way, shape, or form,
yes,
and they're actually enjoying the
Mhm.
community aspect, because like I say all the time, and because I don't like Facebook at all, honestly. Like I think it's awful. And the only thing that I do on Facebook is Linchpin. Like that's the only
Mhm.
place I go. I don't know what else exists on Facebook, and I have no interest in finding out. But
We weren't even Facebook friends until after we were married. It's like, how come you're not friends with me on Facebook?
Yeah.
We don't do anything on
But it's
Facebook.
like the community is so, I mean, this was your prior question too. Like, I mean, the celebration of what people do in that Facebook group is beyond amazing. I mean, there's a extra smiley Canadian fellow who we all see in the morning post, right? I mean, he unfortunately had hurt his ankle or foot. I don't remember exactly which, but like,
Yeah.
I think he rolled it off of like a sidewalk curb.
yeah, and that was soon after like I joined. So like I'm seeing this guy with the biggest smile on his face, like doing chair snatches, and everyone's like, and like
Yes.
genuinely supporting him. And it's like,
Mhm.
listen, this you just do what you got to do for the day, regardless
Yeah.
of whatever it is. And like
Mhm.
even with your hip too, like the approach to
Mm,
like injury and how to deal stuff,
Mhm.
and you're very real about it, and like just say like you do what you can, and like you're not missing the world because you didn't like squeeze out that last 5 pounds on your
Right.
squat, and if you're not selling yourself short, right? And I think that's the big lesson. A lot of folks that used to
Mhm.
like myself that used to go to regular gyms, and it was like or any sort of practice. It's like if you're going to show up today, like you got to give 110%. It's like not every day. I'm over 40 now. Like things
Yeah.
will break down if I do that, and that was a slow and
Yeah.
painful lesson learned, right? So
Well,
that's
and it was almost, I had a surgery at the end of October, so I think we're close in terms of surgery
mm.
last year. So now it's been over a year. And yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to walk slowly on the treadmill, and that's all I can do for months.
Humbling.
That was a big mindset shift because I knew that, okay, I'm going to have to make some different meal choices. That was inevitable. And knowing that I sleep so much better and I'm just just in a better mood when I have like a
I
full
agree.
workout. Um,
her bad moods are never really bad moods. Though. I always say she's like Mr. Rogers kind, and like for her to get upset, it's like kind of hilarious because like
yeah.
she's so much a nice person than I am. But
Something has to be really wrong.
so yeah,
Yeah. But being getting in that mindset of really having to slow down and then
Mm,
coming back from that. I had an I had a hysterectomy in late October and having to go through pelvic floor physical therapy. I definitely highly recommend it. Males can have pelvic floor physical therapy too, which is not well known.
mm.
But even though I had a good handle on pelvic floor because of being a power lifter and just being used to bracing, and utilizing my breathing that way for lifting, I learned so much more from having that time with the pelvic floor physical therapist that um, it's a good thing that I did that before really getting back into picking up heavier kettlebells and putting the barbell
Sure.
on my
Yeah.
back. So
I mean,
yeah,
no doubt about it. But hey, whatever life throws at you, you just deal with it and you make the best decision possible and you
yeah,
move forward. I
yeah.
guess I should say kind of in closing, you two are a great couple because you're both two busy professionals. There's
Mhm.
children involved. Free time is at a minimal. You have a very realistic outlook of like, I want to be fit, I want to be strong, and also if somebody invited me out for nachos and I'm going. Like that's a great place to be. So what would be from each one of you, your advice or recommendation to somebody else watching this whose life is busy, is hectic, they've been meaning to start for 2 years, they haven't, they're a bit overwhelmed. Like, what would you recommend from your experience?
just find out what has to tip the scales to get you to be consistent to start. Because I think the
Mhm.
bigger problem that I knew I used to have too is like if you feel like you're not doing like the full hour X equivalent, then like somehow you're shortchanging yourself, right?
Mm,
Like if you can do a scaled workout twice a week and it's really just no warm up in 20 minutes, like that's great because it's going to get you to be in the consistent habit of doing it. And for me, that was what I needed to do in order to start. So I think everyone can wake up 20 minutes earlier, as painful as it is, and sneak something in or however it works for you. But like that's the key for me was like once you get
Mhm.
over that initial consistency hurdle, like it's a lot easier to then figure out like, all right, how much do I have to go after today versus like I can't get out of bed and get downstairs because that's too much of a mental barrier, right? You see and talk to so many people where that's where they're at, right? It's working out too
Agreed.
hard. It's too much of a barrier to overcome, right? It's like start small, it's okay.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you think, Renee?
I certainly echo everything that Steve has said. I mean, I think the community is a huge benefit to being a part of Linchpin. It's like a giant hug all the time that
It's a great way to say it.
you know, we're all celebrating when somebody has, you know, a loss in their family or
Mm.
has a bit of an injury or a setback in any way. We all feel that too, and you know, we're right there along with them, and uh, you know, you don't get that really anywhere. So, you know, I think knowing that the community is there and being resourceful to reach out and ask questions, and that there are lots of ways that you can modify the workouts to
Thank goodness.
yes, yeah. And another huge plus is that you're doing the workouts too. There's so many coaches out there that are writing up workouts for their clients, and they're not doing the workouts too. So, you know, you being able to see how this workout feels is not something that a lot of clients really even think about when they're choosing a community to be a part of. But it's a huge part of, you know, you are
So
commiserating
funny.
with us.
I've heard other people say that. That's so strange. I don't discount it because I've heard it from enough people that I'm sure it's true. That's so strange to me. Like
Yeah,
that you wouldn't do what you put out for everyone else to do. But
right.
anyway,
Yeah.
that's a totally different discussion.
Mhm.
For anyone who's interested in fitness, they can stop the video right here. But I'm gonna ask one more bonus question for anybody who wants to hang around for because personally, I'm selfishly interested in that.
Uh-huh.
Steve, your passion for cooking the best steak in the world.
It's
This speaks to me. I've
I-
the images of steaks that you have shown.
Mhm.
They're amazing. Can you give your quick little elevator pitch, like what's your steak cooking recommendation so the next time I cook a steak, it will be more delicious than the last time I cooked it?
a charcoal-based smoker. That is undoubtedly the way to
You
do
got
it.
to go that way.
Slow
Yeah.
cook on a charcoal-based smoker.
Is that the big green egg kind of a
No,
thing?
it's a pit barrel smoker. It looks like it's just like a steel drum, and it just has a basket of charcoal on the bottom. It is like
Mhm.
the lowest tech thing in the world, but the amount of smoke you get off of it is like next level. They're
Mhm.
not too expensive, and it will produce the best tasting piece of meat. Like if I had like I would only eat one thing for the rest of my life, it's going to be tomahawk steaks out of the barrel. It's
And where do we typically purchase them from?
yeah, I get like in a Walmart. Like I go to like, not even
Really?
like it's not some amazing like, $1,000 meat. It's it's like you go to the local big box store, you buy a
And
ribeye and then you put it in the barrel. It comes
are you
BJ,
are you
Walmart,
seasoning it?
Walmart.
What are you doing?
a little
Yeah,
salt and pepper. Yeah, the
yeah.
seasonings that I started going crazy with the seasoning. My best friend got me into it, right? And so you'd come over when I had very, very young kids and was like, I'm gonna make you the best meal in your life. And I'm like, all right, you don't really cook. And then I was like, I'm sold. I gotta buy one of these things immediately.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you start going crazy of like trying to do different like marinades and now it's a little salt, a little pepper,
Hmm.
a little slow cook on the smoke on the charcoal, and it is consistently the best meal I've ever had.
Mhm.
Interesting. And do you know, so slow cooking on there, do you have any idea like what's the temperature in the grill and in the cooker?
I do have one of those black Bluetooth thermometers that does take
Yeah.
like the guesswork out of it, but I like cooking big pieces of meat, or you'll stack up like chicken thighs on like a turkey stack, a
Mhm.
turkey skewer. So there's like two family packs. So that's like 10 pounds of meat that you could roast as,
Mhm.
basically a big roasted chicken and a little salt, pepper, cooks for 4 hours. There's a huge window of, basically variability there. So like I can put it out there. It takes 10 minutes to prep. I can do whatever I need to do. It's not going anywhere. And then I come back when it's at temp. And if it's like over 10 minutes, like who cares? And because it cooks as a big piece of meat, it doesn't dry out. And then we have
Hmm.
10 pounds of cooked chicken thighs that
Yeah.
are, ready to roll. And that's dinner for, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
With the smoker, the type of smoker that you're talking about, I'm not exactly familiar with that. Once you light it or whatever, for lack of a better way to say it, do you have to go out over these multiple hours, like make sure it's maintaining an exact temperature, or like re-stoke it with fuel, or what's the
There's a
deal?
little chimney with charcoal that you see, like some people like use the light sonic charcoal grills. So you start that and then put that on, like basically it's a regular barrel that has a lid, and then it
Okay.
has a grate, and then on the bottom of it has a basket that it's a steel basket. You fill up with charcoal. So I put the grate on there, fill that up with the chimney up with charcoal. I light that, go prep the meat, bring the meat out. You dump the lit charcoals that are now hot in the basket. You hang the meat or put it on a grate, and then you cover it and leave it for hours. Like you don't have to do anything else. The
Interesting. It's that low maintenance.
It's that low maintenance. So
Mhm.
it's if you have something that's super fatty, like if you want to cook ribs or you hang something that's too close, like the fat will liquefy and flare up. But short of that, like if it's lean cuts or like big pieces of meat, then they sit there out there for hours and you don't have to worry about it. I cook all like the turkeys for Thanksgiving this way. I do like all our normal meal prep. Like we basically do like meat prep on Sundays. So I'll cook 30 pounds of meat and then you just chop it up and put it in Tupperware and freeze it, and then you're good for all your protein for the next couple weeks.
We're fortunate we have a second freezer to
Yeah.
be able to do that.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yes.
Man, I'm fascinated by it. With regards to like grilling skills from an A plus to an F, I'm probably just like a B. Like I'm nothing amazing. I get it done, it tastes okay, but I'm always looking for like ways to make it more delicious.
Mhm.
If you get bored, if you happen to remember and you get bored, or maybe next Tasty Tuesday, if you have like that sort of grill that you're talking about, put a little link there. I'd be curious just to see
Okay,
what
yeah,
it
yeah.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we're scientists, so we're protocol based. So when you get out of a lab, like
Yes.
cooking becomes the number one hobby. So it's like for me, it's bread making, which
Uh-huh.
of course we're getting her into gluten
Oh,
baking.
Yeah.
And then so I just try to keep it in the morning, so that way look keep the carbs in
oh,
check. And then the protein prep for that, like smoking
Yes.
meat and baking bread are like the two things that I go bananas for. So
Yeah.
homemade bread's so good. My wife's got a bread maker. I think it's like the second one we've had. The first one wasn't good, and she's got one now that she makes a couple different types of breads. It's so good. They're
yeah.
so
I do it all from, the
good.
sourdough. Like, I was a yeast biochemist. So for me, it was like a natural extension. And like, yeah, I just cook them in those old cast iron pans. Again, the lowest tech is like the best
Mhm.
stuff.
Mm,
Like you could just make fantastic bread. I like things that are like that are like you have to be mindful of, but like it takes a lot of time, but not a lot of effort within those times. So like again, like the starter can sit there and the margins are huge. So if I like distracted
mm-hmm.
by kids or we go out or whatever it is, like I come back, it's not ruined, right? And that's the thing I
Right, right, right.
things.
Mhm.
Interesting, fascinating. This was the stuff we had to get to. This is the no pun intended, the meat of the
Yeah,
interview.
We can
Okay.
do this again.
yeah.
Yeah. You got to put out like a
Steve's Tuesday
cookbook,
cooking shows, yeah.
cookbook or top recipes or something. But people would absolutely adore that. But yeah, much appreciated to both of you on so many levels for being real, for being, people like you, or I say this all the time, and I mean it, people like you are why Linchpin is what it is. Like if it
Same
was
to you.
if it was fun, effective workouts and everyone in the community was a jerk, that wouldn't work too well. But luckily we got amazing, amazing folks in there that I
Mhm.
really enjoy talking to, connecting and seeing every day. And my wife and I, we sit around and talk about what's going on in the Linchpin squad and the BTW app or the private Facebook group as if, you guys are our neighbors. Oh, did you see what so-and-so did today? Oh yeah, like, hey, why is Melanie so fast? I don't know. Like whatever it happens to be, it's we're chatting about that stuff. And so
Well,
I
it's the
appreciate
point.
you.
Like the news and everything else we're inundated with the world is always so negative. Like we
Oh,
have a source of information of people that we can relate to that are like is
Mhm.
generally overwhelmingly positive. Like it's
Yeah.
such a great contrast for the world. And I feel like we do the same thing just because we have that need
Yeah.
in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Such a nice balance for the
100%.
rest of the world.
Always
100%.
a
But
topic of conversation every day. And that's another benefit of us both being a part of the
both
community.
in. You're both in. Well, keep it up. Much appreciated. I wish you the best, and I'll see you online.
Thanks,
Sounds
Pat.
great.
Have a good day.
You too.